It's Christmas Eve in 2022, and Dan, a former sergeant-turned-teacher, should be helping his wife Emmy and daughter Maury with the party. Instead, he's on the phone trying to land his dream job at a lab, but unfortunately, his application gets turned down. After venting his frustration outside, Dan joins his daughter on the couch and imparts a valuable lesson about doing what others won't. The family settles in to watch a crucial soccer match, but the game takes an unexpected turn when a luminous cloud of smoke and electricity materializes on the field, followed by people emerging from it. These newcomers bear the appearance of soldiers and are led by Lieutenant Hart, who reveals they hail from the year 2051. They warn of an alien threat known as the White Spikes that has ravaged Earth, decimating humanity. Consequently, these soldiers seek volunteers to journey to the future and aid in the battle. In the ensuing months, nations worldwide dispatch as many troops as possible, yet it's never sufficient. The future continues to demand more, and only a fraction return. With trained soldiers depleted, the government resorts to conscripting civilians, igniting protests from those who believe they shouldn't be forced into a conflict that doesn't directly concern them. Meanwhile, Dan persists as a teacher, struggling to engage students who see little point in learning when their lives may be at stake. Martin, an exception, harbors an intense fascination with volcanoes, eager to discuss them at every opportunity. Just then, Dan receives a crucial message: he's been drafted. At the military facility, Dan undergoes tests confirming his eligibility, given his projected lifespan of only 7 more years. A jolt of pain in his arm reveals a metallic device, explained as a means to monitor him in the future. After a week of duty, the device will bring him back. Dan confides in Emmy, who immediately proposes they flee. Yet, the government tracker proves inescapable. Reluctantly, Dan seeks assistance from his estranged father, James, whom he hasn't seen since childhood abandonment. However, James suspects a government ploy and a heated argument ensues. Ultimately, Dan leaves with the device intact. Back home, he breaks the news to his family but promises he'll return. The following day, Dan enters the training facility, where he befriends scientist Charlie and seasoned fighter Dorian, embarking on his 3rd draft. They receive basic training in shooting and first aid before delving into the intricacies of time travel. During a break in the barracks, an alarm blares, signaling their departure. The trainees are baffled, expecting a full week of training. They're informed that the future can't adhere to a set schedule for assistance. Once assembled, the time link activates, and a cloud akin to the earlier one from the soccer match envelopes them, propelling them into the future. Their destination is Miami Beach, but an error in the output coordinates leads them to plummet onto a building. Many don't survive, but the survivors manage to escape by landing in a pool and swimming to safety. The team gazes down at the devastated city of Miami, now reduced to rubble. They're at a loss for what to do when suddenly, a colonel contacts them, revealing that the city has been overrun by the vicious White Spikes. Soldiers are en route to bomb the area entirely. Their mission is to rescue a trapped research team within a laboratory. Recognizing Dan's military background, the colonel appoints him as the team leader. Dan provides guidance, navigating them through the city, though death and destruction abound. Upon reaching the lab, a grim sight greets them, a deceased alien, prompting Dorian to take a claw as a macabre souvenir. Deeper inside, they locate the research team, unfortunately finding them all victims of an alien trap. The colonel urges them to secure all research copies swiftly, warning that the White Spikes will return if there are bodies about, and jet fighters are closing in. The team hastily gathers the vital materials and proceeds downstairs as quietly as possible. However, a noise catches one of their members' attention, leading to their first encounter with the White Spikes. The alien unleashes a deadly spike from its tentacles, claiming one of their own. In response, the team opens fire. While their bullets prove ineffective against the alien's formidable hides, they do manage to impede their progress as the team descends the stairs in search of an exit. The brutal encounter claims more lives and results in several team members being captured by the aliens. Dan takes up the rear, wielding a fire axe when his bullets prove futile. Dorian ultimately saves the day by revealing the creature's vulnerable spots, the neck and belly. With a horde of White Spikes in pursuit, the team dashes through the streets until they stumble upon a tank meant for their rescue. Tragically, the White Spikes reach it first, rendering it useless. useless. Faced with no other choice, the team confronts the aliens while seeking cover. As the battle rages on, more team members succumb to the onslaught. The survivors eventually find themselves inside a tunnel, where Dan pauses to aid a fallen comrade. This delay prompts two trainees to volunteer as a shield, allowing the rest of the team to escape. Just as this selfless act unfolds, jets swoop in and bombard the area. Hours later, Dan and Charlie regain consciousness at a forward operating base in the Dominican Republic. They're met by Dorian, who grimly informs them of the team's tragic fate. He admonishes Dan for his moment of compassion, as it imperiled the rest. Dorian also reveals he's battling cancer, asserting his control over when he'll meet his end. Their conversation is abruptly interrupted when Dan is summoned to meet with the colonel. Upon hearing Mori addressed by her surname, Dan is stunned to realize she's an older version of his daughter. She's grown into a scientist and leads the R-Force, an initiative of her own creation. Mori maintains a professional and distant demeanor, explaining she didn't bring Dan here to reunite with her father. Instead, she requires his expertise for a specific task. She proceeds to share footage of a distinct white spike, a female of the species. These females are more aggressive, rarer, and nest underground. The male white spikes fiercely defend them, prioritizing the survival of their species above all else. The military employs bombs containing a toxin created by Mori, which has been effective in killing male white spikes. However, the female white spike has proven resistant to this toxin. Thus, Mori seeks Dan's assistance in capturing a female white spike for study, with the hope of developing a more potent toxin to target the aliens' primary means of reproduction. The team prepares for their mission and departs in helicopters. During the journey, Mori recounts the grim events that unfolded. The aliens suddenly appeared in Russia in 2048, managing to evade all satellite and radar detection. In just 3 years, they seized control of the world, with a singular objective: human consumption. Dan is eager to know what happened to him before his demise, but Mori advises against revisiting that past. Upon reaching the white spike nest, they encounter soldiers attempting to restrain the female white spike, provoking her into a violent onslaught that claims the lives of many soldiers. Mori joins the fray, landing a crucial shot on the alien's neck, allowing others to bind her. Desperate, the female calls out to her protectors, and soon the area is inundated with aliens. As the female tries to attack Mori, Dan descends and opens fire on the aliens, eventually joining the team to secure his daughter's safety. The soldiers manage to confine the female white spike in a cage and helicopter, but the male white spikes launch a counterattack, causing one helicopter to crash. Dan and Mori race to a jeep and engage in a firefight to protect the helicopters, enabling them to escape with the captive white spike. Following this, they speed away to safety and signal for help with an SOS flare. At the beach, Mori reprimands Dan for his impulsive actions. Dan's intention is solely to safeguard his daughter, but Mori reveals her lingering resentment. She recounts how Dan left the family when she was just 12 due to the weight of unfulfilled dreams. When she was 16, Dan died in a car accident, and Mori had to cope with his loss. She's hurt by these memories, and Dan is speechless, struggling to comprehend how he has become like his estranged father. Suddenly, he realizes he might grasp James's experiences, who had mentioned how the war left him mentally scarred. The female white spike is relocated to a fortified offshore oil platform, housing the time machine. She remains restrained and receives regular sedatives. Dan and Mori collaborate on analyzing the alien's DNA, attempting to decipher how she resists the toxin. This shared endeavor allows them to reconnect, fostering more amiable conversations and shared meals. On the night before Dan's departure, he expresses his pride in Mori and remarks that her mother would have felt the same. Dan encourages Mori to rest and assign him more tasks since he's there to assist. Mori finally discloses her true motive for bringing him to the future. When she discovers a means to produce a stronger toxin, Dan must return to the past to mass-produce it in preparation for the aliens' arrival. This revelation clarifies her relentless work ethic. She must complete her research before Dan's departure. Dan is torn, unwilling to leave Mori behind to face her potential demise. Mori, however, asserts that she summoned him because she trusts no one else. In that moment, the machine successfully creates a toxin with a 100% match for the female white spike. Simultaneously, the alien awakens and summons her protectors, with several male aliens converging on the platform. Dan contemplates killing the female white spike to halt the attack, but Mori points out they have only one sample of the toxin, which could prove more valuable in the past. As the soldiers defend the platform and aliens breach the labs, Mori and Dan scramble around the platform, attempting to reach the helipad where Dan is scheduled for the time jump. It's a race against time, and they eliminate numerous aliens along the way. Tragically, Murray is struck by a white spike's deadly spike. Dan attempts to assist Murray, who is in agonizing pain. The platform is on the brink of collapse due to an alien ship crashing into it. In a moment of reconciliation, Murray expresses her love for Dan and apologizes for her distant behavior. She hands him the crucial toxin, urging him to take it back to save humanity. However, an alien suddenly appears, dragging Murray down with it. In a desperate bid to rescue her, Dan leaps after them, but the time machine activates, whisking him, along with Dorian, Charlie, and others, back to the past. Fortunately, the toxin remains intact in Dan's grasp. Upon their return, Charlie admits to hiding out during the chaos, confessing his cowardice. Dan confers with Hart, emphasizing the urgent need to mass-produce the toxin to annihilate the aliens. Unfortunately, Hart delivers grim news. The time machine is irreparably damaged, likely due to the destruction on the oil platform. They can never return to the future. Back at home, Dan is in a daze, grappling with the enormity of his experiences. He checks on Murray repeatedly through the night to confirm her survival. When Emmy inquires, Dan confides in her about his encounter with the older Murray. He remains resolute in finding a solution. Realizing that the aliens attacked Russia in 2048 without detection, Dan and Emmy surmise that they must have arrived even earlier, possibly in a remote, unmonitored region. They decide to investigate years preceding the 2048 incursion. Taking immediate action, Dan convinces Dorian to continue the fight. They bring Dorian's trophy claw to Charlie's lab. Charlie identifies volcanic ash sediment on the claw, likely originating from either China or Korea. This puzzling finding suggests a connection between Asia and Russia, leading them to seek the expertise of a volcano specialist. Dan consults his student Martin, who enlightens them about a colossal ancient volcanic eruption in Asia. The ash could have been carried by the wind, eventually becoming trapped in Russian waters that later froze. This revelation implies that the creatures have existed on Earth for millennia, concealed beneath layers of ice. Despite presenting their theory to the government, they're denied resources due to lack of concrete evidence. Determined to proceed, Dan enlists his father James, an off-the-grid individual with a private plane. James is convinced to join the mission after hearing Dan's plea for help. In Russia, Hart, accompanied by soldiers, weaponry, and copies of the toxin, meets the team. Charlie commits to staying visible this time. Upon reaching the Academy of Sciences glacier, strange magnetic readings lead them to an ancient cavern. There, they uncover a frozen spaceship. Acknowledging the dangers of entering, the team presses forward, leaving Charlie and James outside as a precaution. They penetrate the ship, reaching the cockpit and realizing it's a crash site. To their surprise, the pilot's body isn't a white spike. In another chamber, they find the actual white spikes in biopods, revealing them as bioengineered weapons used for colonization. The team injects the pods with the toxin, witnessing the white spikes succumb to its effects. However, the cries of the affected creatures awaken those yet untouched, prompting a fierce attack. The team fights back, managing to eliminate some, but others manage to escape. Dorian, recognizing the only option left, entrusts Dan with his claw and volunteers to remain behind to set off the bomb. James takes aim, engaging the escaping aliens, while Charlie resorts to using a chainsaw when his weapon jams. Dan makes it out of the cavern and urges the others to flee, but Hart and her team are overwhelmed by a massive swarm of aliens. Unable to delay any further, Dorian triggers the explosion, sacrificing himself according to his own terms. Dan, Charlie, and James narrowly escape the blast, but James reveals he spotted an alien with a distinctive red belly making its getaway. Dan realizes it's the female white spike and they split up to pursue her. In a clever ruse, James creates a snowman adorned with clothes as a decoy. When the queen targets it, Dan swoops in on his snowmobile and, alongside his father, opens fire. Together, they force the queen to the cliff's edge. Though she survives the fall, her sight is compromised. In a desperate struggle, Dan seizes the opportunity to inject the toxin into her leg. The queen, however, promptly removes the poisoned limb, preventing the toxin from spreading. When she comes after Dan, he readies a grenade, prepared to take her down with him. Yet, in a surprising turn, James offers his wounded hand to lure the alien with his blood scent. The queen redirects her focus toward him, prompting Dan to intervene. Refusing to lose his father again, Dan confronts the queen head-on, using Dorian's claw to inflict a mortal wound on her neck. With a final act of resolve, he administers the last vial of toxin directly into her mouth, delivering the fatal blow. The queen crashes against a massive boulder, succumbing to her injuries. The following day, global news outlets report on a cataclysmic explosion in Russia that claimed the lives of numerous aliens. The government attempts to take credit for the event. Dan returns home, reuniting with his family, and at long last, past, introduces James to his granddaughter. Together, they now stand united, ready to forge a brighter future.